Good evening, everyone. We're sorry for the delay in getting started. Sometimes you can try all you want to make sure you have no technical difficulties, but sometimes that just happens. So I appreciate your patience in waiting for us this evening. We have a wonderful group of amazing leaders that will be talking to you tonight around mental health. My name is Celia Johnston Blue. I'm the president and CEO of the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition. We have heard so much about our state of affairs as it relates to our mental health, and we have prioritized mental health under our health and wellness platform because of how very important this topic is. And so tonight we have a wonderful group of panelists who you're gonna get to know right away. We're not going to make this welcoming remarks too long. That they will be sharing with you on different areas that certainly should resonate with all of us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our fabulous moderator, Giselle Rivera-Flores, who is the communications director for Senator Robyn Kennedy, who most recently secured a $300,000 earmark from MAWOCC. And Gizel is also someone that has been in the mental health space prior to working for Senator Robyn Kennedy, and is thrilled to be a part of this forum with us tonight. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Gizel. And this is very weird that I have two Gizels. I have a Gizel and a Giselle, right? So but I'll turn it over to our moderator. Thank you, Giselle.
Well, thank you for everyone being here today and taking the time out. I know that we are all kind of just overstimulated from showing up to Zoom events and after work and all of these things, but I think that this conversation is just so timely and so important, and that can obviously be shown by the fact that we have 20-something plus attendees here. So this is our virtual Women of Color Mental Health and Wellness Forum, and where we're going to talk about taking back our mental health and why that's incredibly important, incredibly necessary, and one of the most selfless things you can actually do. And with me, I have a beautiful lineup of panelists. Obviously, I've never been in a space with two Giselles before, so I'm kind of girl fanning because, you know, I'm always the only one. But we have the lovely Dr. Debra Maddox, who is the founder of the Multicultural Wellness Center here in the city of Worcester, which is phenomenal. We have Kim Robles, licensed mental health counselor and board certified dance movement. And then we have Dr. Giselle Hampton, who's also a licensed minister. So thank you so much for being here. As Celia mentioned before, prior to my role with Senator Robyn Kennedy, I'm a board certified health and wellness coach. I kind of jumped into that field mostly because I have developed a lot of businesses for Black and Brown and my disinvested communities for about 13, 15 years. And through that, I started to realize that we were experiencing a lot of burnout. And some of that burnout was definitely making sure that we are taking care of ourselves. And oftentimes the biggest distinguisher from those businesses that were succeeding and those that were not in the BIPOC community were that fact that we often walk into these spaces with burdens and challenges that other people do not. And so we carry a lot of weight with us that come from our ancestors, come from past lived experiences, come from institutionalized racism, and all of these things that we walk around with. And our intersectionality and how we show up into spaces is often very complicated. And most of that is shown through our inability to really show up in a very authentic way that allows us to manifest a really good forum for mental health within ourselves and for our community. And so through that, I started to realize, like, wow, this burnout is real, but it's real beyond our normal whitewashed conversation of burnout, which is you're overworking. Yes, we're overworking, but we're also doing all of these other things. We're also showing up as Black women, we're also showing up as Latina women in spaces that are predominantly male. We are also dealing with microaggressions throughout the day. We are also dealing with social determinants that impact us at a disproportionate rate: housing, food access, all of these amazing things. And so that's really what drove me into that end of saying, I can no longer build businesses. In fact, I want to take care of the people that are building the businesses, and I want to take care of mental health and that aspect. So I am very thrilled to be here, like I said, and I just want to hand it right over to Dr. Maddox. So she has a beautiful presentation that she's going to do, and I'd love to kind of shut up so you guys can hear that one.
Okay, I am going to pull up my presentation. Oh, I have to, no. Technologically challenged here. I have to share it first. And I can't pull it up. Oops. All right, just give me 1 second and I will pull it up. Unless Violet, you would like to pull it up because I seem to have lost it.
Yes, I can do that for you.
Okay.
And while we're waiting for that to come up on our screen, I just want to give you a little bit of background. Dr. Maddox is going to talk about the impact of racial trauma on mental health of women, on women of color. So that's going to be the arching message throughout this presentation and throughout her setup and some of the good things that she's going to present with us.
Okay. All right. So we can go to the second slide. Okay, so the focus of my presentation is in 3 areas. One being racial trauma. The second area is self-help tools. And the third would be resources for healing. But I would like to begin with an excerpt from the foreword of the book, Out of the Fire, by Dr. Jennifer Shepard Payne, PhD, who wrote about her personal experience with racial trauma. And she wrote, "I'm sick of shifting. I'm sick of dancing to and fro, slithering between Afro and mainstream mentalities, sliding on the attire of appropriateness. At home in my robe of Blackness and Black spaces and wearing the cloak of conventionalism in white spaces. The camouflage is too tight for me. It chokes me at the neckline. I can't breathe. But I've assimilated though. I've standardized myself, conformed myself. I've whittled myself down to become non-threatening and non-Black spaces. I have attained. I have arrived. But what have I attained?" So in reading that, I should have prefaced it by telling you to think about your own experiences, but it's not too late. You know, you can think about your own experiences and see if that resonates with you, because for a lot of us, it does. You can go to the next slide. So we start out with identifying what is trauma. So according to the American Psychological Association, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event, like an accident, a rape, or a natural disaster. Or a person may experience trauma as a response to any event they find physically or emotionally threatening or harmful. We experience that all the time, you know, that second definition. And so there are several types of trauma. There's acute trauma, and this happens from a single stressful or dangerous event. There's chronic trauma, which results from repeated and prolonged exposure to highly stressful situations. Examples of that include child abuse, bullying, domestic violence. Again, I posit that that happens with us as people of color as well, because we constantly are under stress as a result of racial insults and other things. Complex trauma, it results from exposure to multiple traumatic events. That fits for us too. And then secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. It is another form of trauma. And it's when we take on symptoms of other people who've experienced trauma. Some examples include watching things on TV, you know, like people getting shot. And sometimes parents, children, they receive vicarious trauma through observing their the parents, because the parents are going through traumatic situations, they bring that home, the kids feed off of that. We walk with trauma every day. You can go to the next slide, please. So similar to survivors of other types of trauma, Black and Brown people often experience symptoms after encountering racism. So below are some of those symptoms like hypervigilance, headaches, insomnia, body aches, memory difficulties, self-blame, confusion, shame, and guilt. And there are other symptoms as well. You can go to the next slide. So racial trauma is a cumulative experience where every personal or vicarious encounter with racism contributes to more subtle and gradual chronic stress. We, again, as Black and Brown people, we walk with this every day, and we develop what we see on the outside is an adaptation to that. However, internally, there are things that go on psychologically that's not pulled to the surface. And we feel it in our bodies, we feel it in our minds, but we don't have the language to identify it. You can go on to the next slide. So why does racism still exist? I mean, we've arrived in some ways. That's what, you know, the doctor indicated from the poem I read. In her book, Caste, The Origins of Discontents by Isabel Wilkinson, she introduced the concept of America being part of a caste system. She identified 3 caste systems that have existed in the world, with one being Nazi Germany, where they sought to destroy Jewish culture. Second being India, where within their caste system, people who are born into the caste, they cannot rise above their station in life. We're taught that we can rise above our station in life and, you know, make money and fit in. But in this United States, there's a race-based caste pyramid that's based on the color of our skin and our race. Each version of the caste system relied upon stigmatizing those deemed inferior to justify the dehumanization necessary to keep the lowest ranked people at the bottom and to rationalize the protocols of enforcement. You can go to the next slide. So this gets enacted through oppression, microaggressions, and macroaggressions. So microaggressions are those small, they're not small, they are small, but they add up. They're insults, they're statements, they're behaviors that people engage in that psychologically damage or it makes people of color feel badly and turn inward. And so those macroaggressions are large insults, behaviors that people don't care. They don't care what you think about how they feel or what they say. So how do we address racial trauma? We address it by, one, having a clearer understanding of the psychological processes that occur as a result of encountering racism, as I indicated, through microaggressions or blatant racism, such as what is going on today in this country and across the world, because people are blatantly racist. And Trump's, well, I'm not even going to say Trump, I'll say the MAGA movement, you know, that's so blatant, you know, their behaviors. What's going on in Florida with their changing history and taking like literature and curricula out of school systems, and their term, the woke culture, which is like, you know, beyond my understanding. I do understand, but then I don't understand. So In the 1970s, a psychologist by the name of Cross developed a racial identity model to better understand how we, as people of color, experience psychological wounds resulting from racism, and how we have to adjust and adapt our ways of being in order to fit in. So we call like that switching, code switching, or whatever you want to call it, as a dissonance, confusion. So becoming aware of the racial identity models is very important because it allows you to understand what's going on psychologically. The second is by having a trauma toolkit. It's helpful in dealing with consequences of racial hostility. You can go to the next slide. So in this trauma toolkit that I'm talking about, there are 7 areas to focus on. And so one being an identity wellness toolbox, which, you can describe what you feel when you are managing and responding to racism or biases in a healthy manner. So that is one, just to have a level of understanding is helpful. And then number 2, forming a daily maintenance of centeredness in the face of identity-based racism. So within that, one would become aware of being grounded, anchoring yourself in a place so that you're able to deal with and cope with situations as they arise. So one, review those racial identity models. I never knew they existed until I was in my doctoral program. And my program was in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire is pretty white, but the school is pretty progressive. And I was introduced to that, and it just like opened up, like my way of thinking and seeing myself and understanding myself in a hostile, racist environment. So B, connecting with friends who have similar experiences, using prayer and spiritual practices, as well as meditation and mantras, are helpful to aid in centering. And engaging in activism and self-management, like self-care, is very central to being healthy with mind and body. 3, being able to identify the triggers that you may have, like knowing like someone you work with is going to make some comments that get you upset, that make you angry or depressed or whatever. So being able to know that, okay, this makes me upset. This is what I'm going to do instead. Getting my balance, getting my level of centeredness is a strategy. So number 4, knowing like early warning signs and how you would respond, and developing a response plan. Like, okay, what does it feel like when you encounter racial bias and trauma? So listing what those warning signs would be. Like me, I get stress in my shoulders, like I feel really tense, so body aches, fatigue, anxiety, your central nervous system is off, feeling depressed or difficulty sleeping, and then developing strategies to help counter that. Next slide, please. So then acute identity-based racial trauma response plan. So list the signs that you are experiencing, hypervigilance, heightened emotions, depression, and identify an action plan to cope with those symptoms. Number 6, you can develop a crisis plan. We do that, in behavioral health often with our clients who are experiencing extreme stress. So ask yourself, how would you know if you were experiencing a crisis due to identity-based racism? Like thoughts of harming others, you're just getting that angry that you want to hurt someone, or harm yourself. So you would, develop a response plan as far as that is concerned. And then you would list people who you can reach out to, like resources, such as friends, family, or even a clinician to help you through that. And then a post-crisis planning. What do you do after you get through the crisis? How do you navigate so that it doesn't happen again? That's where you develop those resources, either family, friends, community, to gain a sense of centeredness. Next slide, please. So there are some non-traditional practices that are helpful in dealing with trauma. So this is exciting for me because emotional emancipation circles, which they help one to deepen their understanding of the impact of racism and trauma on oneself and self-worth. And it just so happens that they have a training that's coming up, an 8-week training starting on October 1st, and it's free. And it's on Sundays from 3 to 4:30. And you're able to register for that on Eventbrite. And I have the information here. So I'm gonna have them pass out this slide because I'm just breezing through it. So you can refer to that if you were interested in joining an emotional emancipation circle. And then another is familiarizing yourself with identity models. And I have some handouts that they're going to pass out if you're interested. And it has like the full description of racial identity models. Like there are different ones. There's a models that relate to Black and brown people. And then there's a model that is for biracial, the biracial experience, because that's an experience in and of itself. And that's very conflicting for people. And then Dr. Janet Helms from Boston College, she developed a racial identity model where it focuses on racial identity of white people and how they receive Black and brown people. And so then reading about decolonization, we feel we still suffer from the remnants of colonization. The African diaspora and those big world powers, they were like all around the world, and they affected us, and they still affect us in many ways. And mindfulness practices such as meditation, visualization, stress management, and biofeedback. I like biofeedback. Biofeedback helps with your central nervous system to regulate that through breathing, helping you to deal with this fight, flight, or freeze response. That's so significant in trauma. And we have an office in Nevada, and Medicaid in Nevada pays for biofeedback, but that's not something that, is allowable here in Massachusetts. But there are biofeedback technicians that practice, fee for service. You pay them for that service. Next slide. So there are traditional therapies that you can look up on your own because I don't really have time to go into them. Acceptance and commitment therapy, which uses cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness training to help people sort of like understand where they are and what changes they can make to take control over their psychological health. Cognitive behavioral therapy, parts and memory therapy, which is a very, it's a unique therapy. It's on the West Coast, but it's part of internal family systems therapy, where you take the parts of yourself and heal through reconsolidation of those traumatic experiences to lessen the effect. Again, emotional emancipation circles and eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which helps individuals to desensitize themselves from the traumatic experience by using bilateral stimulation. So you can look up these therapies, and then like my email, I can provide that so that if you have questions, you can certainly contact me, and I'll be willing to answer whatever questions you might have. You can go to the next slide. So there were some books I listed. The Pain We Carry by Natalie Gutierrez, the Racial Identity Healing Handbook, which I have some in the resources that I'll be handing out. There were some exercises in there. You can go to the next page. Hope I'm not going over in time. Out of the Fire, I read the preface from that. And Sisters of the Yam, Black Women in Self-Recovery, Mental Health Matters, which is a wonderful journal that can be used. And it has like prompts for self-discovery and healing. And I think that's it for now. We're going to be doing a mindfulness exercise at the end. And it's a little lengthy, but you know, you can stay on for as long as you are able to. So you can just, you know, quietly depart. But those who are able to stay on, it's entitled Black Lives Matter, but you can insert whatever you want in there. It doesn't just have to say Black Lives Matter, you know. So, all right, thank you. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Maddox. And we do have a question. We actually had two questions. One of them, they felt that you actually went around and you answered it anyhow. So you must have been, you know, very thorough with your information here. But the next one comes from Jeannie, and it says, what is the extent of resources and practitioners to help who understand racial trauma? Is there a collective list statewide? Is it, or something that is being probably developed?
Well, so that's a very interesting question. So my organization is built around people of color, Multicultural Wellness Center. So we deal with people from different cultures, and we are aware of those traumas. And it's very difficult because you can get any clinician, but can you get a clinician who specializes in working with people who have been traumatized? So what I would suggest is to go on Psychology Today, because practitioners list their services, what services they provide and what their specialties are. So to answer your question, I'm not aware of a full body of people within a resource list, but the resource that I would suggest would be Psychology Today. And maybe Kim might have some information to share when she does her presentation.
Yes, and the website, it's Psychology Today. I don't even know if the magazines are still in play.
It is. You get it with your subscription. You get a magazine monthly, but it is Psychology Today. And it's for different locations. You can say what city, you know, Boston, Worcester. It'll have clinicians or providers who provide services, and it gives a description of what type of services they provide.
And I'm actually going to drop it in the chat for everyone, so that way you have it, and you can save the chat if you wanted to later on. So that way you can go back and review anything that you might be overlooking. so that way we can all stay on the same page. Another question from Jamie. What has helped me extremely is Trisha Hershey, aka the Nap Bishop. Anyone know about the Nap Bishop? Any commentary? She encourages us to connect to the liberating power of rest, daydreaming, and naps as a foundation of healing. I recently left a toxic work environment and experienced discrimination, trauma, and have needed to prioritize healing from that negative experience. Kudos to you for even acknowledging that you were in a toxic environment. Any commentary there from our panelists?
No, just like you said, congratulations, to your level of awareness and your ability to take, action. So some of the things that I talked about can further support your actions, those resources.
Beautiful. And we have another one here. Dr. Kyra Williams, have you noticed or aware that there are differences in the experiences of lighter skinned people as opposed to darker skinned people? And what are those differences?
Well, and anyone can speak to this. It's not just me, but any of the panelists, because, we've been conditioned to dislike ourselves, to dislike the color of our skin. And even within slavery, people who had lighter skin were allotted more privileges. So as a people, we're taught that dark is ugly, black is ugly, light is beautiful. So absolutely is the answer. I've noticed it.
I just wanted to close off with saying excellent presentation and thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And so now we're going to end up moving over to Kim Robles, who is a mental health, who's going to talk about topic of mental health in our immigrant communities. And if you are not hiding under a rock right now, you would know that Massachusetts, the tri-state, and many of the northern densely populated states and cities are actually experiencing an influx in new arrivals because of the harmful conditions in other countries. And we have a lot of new people in our communities. And I just want to say, as someone that's working closely with them, that we just need to be kind. And I'm sure that Kim Robles has many, many good nuggets to give us for knowledge, but I'm going to hand over the mic to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Giselle. I am first wanting to say I feel blessed to be here today amongst many of my sisters and however you identify yourself. I first want to just say that I am here as an identified Latina woman, Puerto Rican. My parents had immigrated here to the United States, forced from Puerto Rico. And so even though I was raised here, and I grew up here in Massachusetts, I'm still very connected and feel very connected to those that are coming here to the United States and having to learn a whole new way. So I don't have a PowerPoint. I will be sending MAWOCC just a brief beat with the information I'm sharing today. The time that I want to spend with you, though, is to piggyback with what Dr. Maddox has started with and teach you some of those ways that you can manage the mind, the body, and your spirit as you are walking in this time of change, transformation, transition. And like I had shared with Dr. Maddox and Dr. Hampton, things are elevating. And we're going to feel the energy within this earth. It's going to vibrate within our communities. When we go to the grocery store, when we have to go pay a bill, when we have to find an apartment or a place to live, when we're settling in a shelter, when we're trying to access more resources to take care of our family. You can also put in there, Giselle, Movimiento LLC.org. And I've been slowly adding more and more resources on my website. So how do I want to begin? Because Dr. Maddox really talked about the foundation of what happens when we come here is trauma is one of the pieces that happens when we come here to the United States and have to experience a whole new culture. And then we're leaving our culture to come into a new one. So let's begin by just putting our hands on our heart and take a moment to either close your eyes or gaze down at your desk or the floor and take a moment to just sense your breath and just feel the rhythm of your breath. And then breathe in and out. Either listening to the sound of your breath, the vibration of your heartbeat, sensing it within your hands. Taking a moment, just sense where you're at right now. What are you experiencing for yourself in this discussion? And the information that you've just received. Take another breath in and out. Take one more breath in and out. I like to call this a checking in, because we're going to hear lots of information. We're going to receive a lot of information. We're all coming with our own stories. We're all coming with maybe some remembrance, some flashes, our own experiences, our family's experiences. So I want to share, how do you take care of your mind when you're stressed? Let's begin there. And there might be some simple things that you've already begun to do or wanting to do or interested in doing, like either attending a webinar or writing your story, putting it on paper, or painting your story, or listening to music and dancing your story, and creating an environment that allows you to feel safe while you are experiencing more and more of like the word we're hearing a lot is migration or refugee, the term refugee. And if we remember, if we go back, we were all immigrants at one point. And so we are not alone in where we are today. So we're here to support each other and make sure that have what you need to bring you forward on your path and support. So is journaling the right fit for you? Is art and music the right fit for you to clear your mind? Is breath what you need? I shared in the chat that there's a documentary that came out called Grounding. And what they're researching is people go out, put your bare feet on the ground, touch the earth, lay down on the ground, and just connect back to the earth. Because many of us have come from our culture where nature may have been one of the ways that we've connected. So how do we allow ourselves to have that experience mentally? And also, that may be a mantra or a Bible verse that you need to repeat over and over and over so that your mind remains clear, peaceful, removing some of the stressful thoughts that resonate in your mind on a regular basis, and you're trying to figure out, how do I get this out of my head? Because it causes so much physical stress. My body aches, my shoulders, my neck, the tension, what we're carrying, what some of you are already experiencing on that level. And you're probably saying, what do I do? What statements do you have to put in your home, in your environment, on Post-it notes to remind you that there is a sense of hope and patience, and that peace is going to come, and being able to fill your mind with that. And that may mean not watching the news or limiting your time on the news. It may mean that you may need to go back to some of the music that brought joy in your heart, that made you want to sing, that made you want to dance. It may mean that you might need to limit some of the social media time that you're having, to remove yourself from some of all of that's coming in your thoughts, in your mind, through your eyes that digest and then just fill your body with tension and stress. Stress is the key here to how it affects us and how we're going to manage, and how you create your environment to be a safe space. So the moment that you step in to that environment where you sleep, where you eat, where you bathe, where you take care of your family, that's something you might want to be considering. What changes do I need to make? What do I need to eliminate in order for me to come in and have a peaceful mind? And then the body. Oh boy, the body. Body carries so much. It carries so much information, and it carries information in our muscles, in our bones, in our central nervous system. It can create our blood flowing up and down from our head to our feet. So I want to teach you a technique that I've taught many families, many people, and you can use this with children, your adolescents. You can do this for yourself. You can teach your grandparents, and it's called alpha theta breathing. It's one of the trauma breathing techniques that's used, and I'll share it in one of the resources so that you have access to all these other resources of techniques. It's easy. So as you take a moment, you just checked in. You just want to identify 0 to 10. What are you feeling in your body? The tension and the stress, 10 being at the highest level of discomfort, 0 being very, very little, very calm. And just take about 10 seconds just to check in and see what number are you at? Are you a 7? Are you a 3? Just hold that number. Remember that number. And I'm going to count for you. And you're going to breathe in. And try to slowly breathe in your nose. You're going to hold it for a second. Then you're going to breathe out of your mouth nice and easy. Now, I usually do 10 seconds, but not everybody can do 10 seconds. So we're going to do 5. Let's get everybody ready. You can even put your bare feet on the floor or on the rug. Put yourself comfortable in your chair. Hold your heart. Put your other hand maybe on your belly button. Breathe in nice and slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold your breath. Breathe out of your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let out all the air. We're going to do this 3 rounds. You're going to breathe in again, and I'm going to count for you. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold your breath. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last round. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold your breath. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let all the air out. Take a moment. Check in with that last number. See if that number has changed. The goal is for you to reach 0. If you're already at 0, all praises. You've been doing some amazing grounding work. If you're not, no worries. Take your time. You can use this exercise in your car, on the toilet, in the bed laying down. You can use it anywhere. I know we're running out of time. And time is of an essence. I don't know how many more minutes I have, but I'll include more technique. The third is your spirit. Take time to connect back to your spirit. Maybe prayer was your ritual. Maybe meditating. Maybe just sitting and playing your instrument or painting or doing what you know connected you back. Because when you're in this culture here in the United States, it's a very traumatic experience coming here into this culture and to adapt. Again, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me this time. I appreciate you so much. And I'm so happy I've been invited. I'm here.
Thank you so much for that, Kim. I know that we have a few questions for you. We're going to move over to Dr. Hampton for now, and then I'll wrap up everything with the questions at the end, just so everyone is aware. I know I'm feeling a lot more centered and in place, so thank you for that. I'm hoping everyone feels a little bit better. So as we move into Dr. Gizel, the other Giselle Hampton's presentation, she's going to speak about the intergenerational caregiving and mental health aspect to that, which, as we all know, is very daunting. I hand it over to you, Dr. Hampton.
Are you able to go in your settings, Giselle? On your computer? And audio? Maybe we can go to a question while we're waiting, while she,
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you, Giselle.
And so to Kim, there was a lot of thank yous. Thank you, they feel centered. Thank you, they feel a lot better than prior to having that moment of centeredness. Maria Rivera-Flores says, thank you, Kim. Listening to you, I realized how much I have used music as a way to heal trauma and handle stress. And I have to echo that because that's a huge one for me as well. So thank you for bringing that up as another method, a byproduct of all of this. And then we have another one that says, I'm dealing with what I believe is neurodermatitis, and there's no real cure for it. Do you think that these techniques may be helpful towards managing it?
Yes, one of the things that I've learned about the neurodermatitis is that many people that come here to the United States, they're eating different foods that they're forced to eat, that they might not have experienced in their own country. And so the change of food can also change the way that the body is reacting to that. And so I found lots of clients noticing when they're no longer having the fruits and vegetables that they had in their country, or access to the kinds of meat that were much more pure right from the farm, cut straight, and they had access it right there from the butcher shop or their neighbor. That when they come here in the United States, it's not the same. It's very different. So the body is actually having a form of a traumatic experience. So the nervous system is going to respond, the organs are going to change, and the nervous system is going to switch out. And so there is going to be some changes. So one of the things that I often, because I've learned so much about nutrition in order to help many of my clients and manage mental health, is just going back and looking at what you might be excessively eating, right? I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't speak as a nutritionist does, but what I have learned is when you go back to kind of do, am I doing too much sugar? Am I doing too much flour? Am I doing too much meat that I am not used to eating here, but that when back in my country, it was so much better? Am I not having the vegetables that I have access to when I was in my other country, or the fruits? And so just kind of going back to your culture, and that is going to be beneficial for you. So you might have to do a process of elimination just to kind of see where things are at. And you might notice that you might need to make some changes. You know, is cocoa butter something that you used to use and you kind of stopped using it? Taking doses of olive oil to help, you know, bring some of those nutrients back in, you know, so just those little bits and pieces. And there's so much great information out there. So it's flooded. You just have to Google it, YouTube it, you know, and there's all these different ways that you can manage that. But yes, if you're using some of the, for me, I'm an expressive arts therapist, board certified dance movement therapist. I work a lot with the body. And so if there's some things that your body is accelerating in, then you want to go back and go, okay, what am I doing more of that's causing my body to react to? Is it I'm overly stressed? Is there something else? And so you do a little bit of investigating that might help you kind of figure out the answers.
Thank you for that. I know that a lot of these stressors, like you're saying, we're being introduced to new foods, especially people coming over. That's a massive concern for us on the state levels, ensuring that there's culturally appropriate foods, not just because we want to be culturally sensitive to your likings, but also to ensure quality, healthy lifestyle, because that is a vast difference in changes. I just know, just in general, we introduce a lot of foods here in the US that are actually banned and not used in other countries. And so when you are forcefully introduced, it does cause a lot of disconnect with how your body reacts to that. And I mean, some of us are probably walking around right now eating those things and feeling like, wow, I should have never touched that. But these are the things that we have been introduced to, and a lot of the new arrivals are being forced into this. And unfortunately, there's a massive disconnect. And so even on the state level, we're trying to figure out, how do we make this more culturally appropriate and more culturally sensitive, so that way we can move forward and allow people to thrive in an environment that is for them, and not force them to assimilate to our environment and harm themselves, if that makes a lot of sense. And so some of the other comments, you got a huepa, gracias hermana, so thank you, sister. Jamie says that thank you for that feedback for the neurodermatitis. I will need to look into the nutrition and what I need to access better to cope with this condition. Janice said, enjoying this technical detail from Dr. Maddox intertwined with emotional bio considerations from Kim. So everyone has been very grateful for all of the input here, all of the information. And I'm just going to check on Dr. Hampton real quick, make sure that we are all still here. Nothing just yet. And so what we can do is, if anyone has any additional questions, in which I was going to save time at the end for, feel free to add them now into the chat, and we can answer them to the best of our abilities at the moment. I've also added LinkedIn accounts. I've also added websites. I'm trying to creep and make sure that everyone has all kinds of goodie information, so that way you can follow up thereafter and ensure that this connection stays live. I know that we are overwhelmed with Zooms and overwhelmed with information throughout the day, but this could be a great way to help yourself digest some of this information later on. Go ahead, Kim.
I will also be
Yeah.
adding the BIPOC mental health toolkit that Massachusetts has developed. So that will be a great resource for all of us.
Beautiful.
We can hear you, Dr.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's through the computer, right, Paris? Violet?
Yes.
Okay, you all can all hear me.
We can hear you, Dr.
Yes.
Okay, fabulous, fabulous. Okay, I'll stay on just in case, okay? Thanks. All right. All
Are we
right,
still
so
hearing
hello
you?
everyone. Thank you all for having me. I am excited to be here with my MAWOCC sisters and the panelists here today. They gave us a challenge of 15 minutes, and I know that some of you were thinking the preacher's gonna go over, but I am gonna stay within my 15 minutes. Wanted to just start out in just some of you don't know me. I am from the beautiful island of Antigua and Barbuda. I have been in Worcester now for 40 years. It seems like a long, long time. And so I also come with the history that was presented before me by the panelists, and have gone through much of what we are discussing tonight. So having said that, Paris, we can continue on. I am tasked with discussing the caregiver role that Black women are responsible for. And as you can see on the slide, this is data from 2020. And if you notice, there are quite a few individuals who are caregiver, and probably some of you here online have caregiving responsibility. And 61% of that caregiving is done by women. And out of that percentage, approximately 30-something% is African-American caregivers who are of the age in 2015, the average age was 44 years old for a female Black caregiver. And in 2020, the age has increased to 47.7. African-American caregivers are typically responsible for caring for their parents, siblings, children, extended family members, friends, neighbors, church members, anyone who they feel they need to help and offer a lending hand. The average caregiver in 2015 worked approximately 32.9 hours. In 2020, that increased to 37.5 hours. Next slide, please. The traditional African-American culture, as you heard before, typically is a close-knit family, and it's normal to see multi-generations living in one household. And this picture that I chose here represents that, and that still holds true today. Next slide, please. In this particular slide, and you will see that this is a current update from 2023, the caregiver statistics. 89% of caregivers are unpaid. And of the 89% that are unpaid, 28% of them are Black African-American women. And as you can see on the slide again, the breakdown of the parental responsibilities, 48% care for a parent, 11 for a spouse or a partner, and the list goes on. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, the average age currently, 2023, I would suspect had gone up. The data is not out yet, but given the trajectory from 2015 to 2020, I would suspect that that number is now around 50 or 51-year-old for a Black woman who is caregiving. Next slide, please. As Dr. Maddox mentioned earlier, some of the challenges that Black women face, and I wanted to just piggyback on this and highlight that the challenges that are faced are ongoing. These are daily challenges that we face as caregivers. We want to talk about the traumas that we have been faced with every day. And I think people underestimate the level of impact that these traumas have. And these are just some of them. When we talk about untreated mental illnesses, we talk about the complex traumas, generational traumas, racial traumas, PTSD. We sometimes, I think, talk about them lightly instead of really realizing the depth of the impact of what's happening to us as women every day. Personal needs that are going unmet. We have food, housing, financial insecurities, lack of access to healthcare, which continues to be ongoing. Even on MAWOCC, we're trying to bridge those gaps. Most Black women who are in a caregiving role have their own health issues because they spend more time taking care of everybody else. They're working full time. They have all these responsibilities and tend to take care of themselves last. We know most Black women have hypertension, risk of hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, and the list goes on and on. And again, a lack of personal care because we've been taught as Black women to take care of everyone else, and we put ourselves last. Our relationships suffer within family systems and also interpersonal relationships because we just don't have time sometimes to meet with other people and spend time and socialize because our hands are full with responsibilities. Next slide, please. Mental health, understanding the mental health signs, and some of these were stated earlier, recognizing the changes in behaviors of those that we're caring for. Sometimes, you know, it's not picked up on because we're like, oh, this person just having a bad day or they're having a bad mood, when in reality, there's a mental health situation that's going on. Really getting an understanding of the disabilities, the diagnoses that our loved ones are given, what do they really mean? And I hear the term thrown around a lot, you know, that person has ADHD, this person has that and that, but what do they have an understanding of? Its entirety, and really knowing when to get help for our loved ones. Again, if we don't understand what's happening with them, there's a lag in when we get treatment. Caregivers have a task medically. There's a lot of appointments, exams, specialty care, counseling, back and forth, trying to, again, balance between work and all the needs of their loved ones. It's a daunting task. Sometimes caregivers don't know how to effectively communicate to physicians properly because this is a new area for them in taking care of people and understanding the correct medical needs. Utilizing skilled facilities. As Black people, we typically shy away from that because we're taught and it's culturally expected that we're going to take care of our loved ones at home. We don't want to put them in a assisted living or nursing homes or things like that because we are supposed to take care of them. The the primary thing that I want to point out with that, because I am going through this situation myself, is knowing and understanding your limits and what you're able to do as a caregiver. If it's not feasible for you to take care of them at home, it may be wise for you to check out a skilled facility, so that you're not overburdened and not able to provide the appropriate care. Also learning how to manage adaptive living skills and activities of daily living, right? Sometimes that may be a new area for some, managing medications, managing somebody else's finances. Is there a safety risk for that person? And how do you keep that individual safe in the home and outside of the home if they have certain diagnoses? Next slide, please. Some of the other challenges is navigating systems. We have a lot of systems. We have social services, and more we have grandparents who are taking care of grandchildren. They have to encounter DCF, maybe DDS, their own mental health, DMH, Department of Public Health, and they may not know how to really interact with those individuals in the most effective way. There's also legal help that is available that some may not be aware of. There's also the challenge of navigating the court process. And sometimes because of a lack of knowledge, we don't know what to ask for, right? Then we have paperwork that can be difficult because the language is not written all the time in simplified ways. It can be complicated. Maybe the way that people treat us or engage us can be intimidating because they think we don't know what we're doing or saying, and they can dismiss us at, if we don't have the proper help and knowledge of how to navigate these systems. In terms of education, more caregivers now, especially with younger children, teenagers, are having to engage the school system, attending meetings, learning technology. You didn't hear about a Chromebook until COVID. You have parents who are now having to learn how to support their children. During the pandemic, caregivers became overnight educators. They had to learn quickly how to support the children and even those in college, how to navigate technology. The Parent Professional Advocacy League is also another agency that I think a lot of people are not aware of, and to seek appropriate support when they don't feel as if they are being heard or getting proper support. Next slide, please. So with all of that Black women encounter on a daily basis, right? Since the pandemic, we now have a caregiver public health issue, right? There's now an increased stressor in mental health. There's an increase in suicidality rates among Black women and youth, increased feelings of loneliness, isolation, lack of community. And I really think what COVID did, because we did not have the ability to come together, a lot of people were separated, right? And people are still feeling the after effects of that. The decline in quality care for loved ones because they weren't able to access certain services. And also the deterioration of the caregiver's health. Again, trying to make sure everyone else is taken care of and putting themselves last, right? Caring for multiple family members, because during COVID, a lot of people move in with each other because of a variety of reasons, housing and unemployment and so forth, right? Forget about legacy planning. You don't have enough money to meet your daily needs. You're not thinking about monies, right, to save for future generations. We've seen multiple deaths that has taken place and people were not able to cover funeral expenses. A lot of GoFundMe pledges were requested to help bury loved ones. As far as the youth and their increased stressors, A lot of youth also were parentified. A lot of them were asked to step up and help and take on more responsibilities in the home. Some had to take on jobs to help their families. We saw an increase where younger students were able to take the babysitting test so they can care for their siblings in the home during the pandemic. All of these things have brought on additional stressors and anxiety to young people, in addition to school challenges. If you think about it, students who were in elementary school, 5th or 6th grade, they were home during the pandemic, or they participated in hybrid. And so they didn't get a chance to really form relationships. There was a lack of socialization that happened with them. And I see a lot of clients who come in who have anxiety or social anxiety because they went right from 6th grade and now they're in 8th grade and they don't know anyone, and they struggle to really form these relationships that would have been a natural progression from elementary to middle school on to high school. Okay, next slide, please. Where does the church fit in all of this, and houses of worship? As a Black community, and we know from our diaspora, spirituality is a huge part of our community and continues to be. I wanted to really make sure that this slide was here because I believe that our Black churches and houses of worship have a responsibility to continue to support the community and our Black women and families in terms of mental health. And as you can see on the slide here is one, create a safe space for people to be able to come and meet. Whether they come to church or not, there can be groups formed where people can come in and be able to have a space that they can get their needs met. Understanding there's a difference between people fitting in when they come to your church and feeling a sense of belonging when they come. And meeting people where they're at. Not everyone has been church, not everyone is indoctrinated in scripture, and we need to welcome them where they are, right? Not picking apart what's happening with them, but really getting to know them and really getting them to feel comfortable being in the space. Another thing is acknowledging church hurt. A lot of folks have been hurt in the church, and that can't be dismissed. We can't ignore and act as if, people are making things up. These things are real. Many of us have experienced it, and we need to not dismiss folks when they come and acknowledge these hurts. We can provide training to leaders, the staff, and the membership. What does mental health look like in its basic form so that we can identify when individuals need help, okay? Utilizing professional services outside of the church, and also utilizing the professionals that you have in your church, even if they just offer you resources that the members can benefit from, okay? And knowing when to seek external support. We are the church, and we believe in prayer. We believe that God can change things, but God also gave us some wonderful professionals, right, to help us. And I think we need to utilize them more and partner with these professionals to make sure that our members' needs are met. Providing opportunities in the community, holding workshops so people can come and get information. Okay, we can pray, but we need to act. We need to step up and make sure that we're doing our part in the community. And following up with folks to make sure that they're okay. Make sure that they have, their needs have been met after, we've provided the resources. Next slide, please. What can we do as individuals to help caregivers? And I won't go through all of them in the interest of time, but basic things like checking on them, right? Spending time with them, acknowledging the sacrifices that they're being made, right? They've taken on this responsibility, and we, again, knowing from what we've heard already, there's a challenge with that, right? Point out the wins, point out the great things that they're doing, right? Offer them honest and realistic support. Don't say you're going to help and then you don't show up, right? Don't try to be an expert, right? Refer them to the expert. Help them with applications, housing applications or whatever it may be that they need, to help them expedite, and get the resources they need. Okay. And remember that people just want to know that they're loved, that they matter, that they're important to God and those that they love. Most people are not in the situation they're in because they want to, but because there's a need. Next slide. Taking care of yourself. Those of us who are caregivers, and we hear this all the time, again, another word that gets thrown around loosely, self-care, self-care, self-care. I hear it so often, but are we really doing it? There's only one you, and we need to prioritize ourselves. We need to make sure that we're scheduling time to take care of our needs instead of burning ourselves out, because it's so easy to do. And learning to say no, right? We can only do so much. Set limits with people. Don't have people drop by when you know that you're in the middle of dinner and you have a full night ahead of you, right? Being open to new ideas, meditate, pray, do all the things that make you feel good about yourself. And don't forget to ask for help. We need to ask for help more. And we need to learn to love ourselves more. When we love ourselves more, we can do all the things that are above. Next slide, please. The next two slides are just resources, and I broke them down into local resources. The first few pertain to elder care, and then it's broken down to other resources. If you click on the links, you will see listings of other resources, particularly regarding Worcester and services in this area. If you go to the home care website, you will see a whole listing of a variety of services that are offered here in the city. Next web link. And this is national resources. These are some of the agencies that I look for information as well, that I think would be beneficial. There's also a book, third from the bottom, a Multicultural Guide to Caregiving. A wonderful book. It's simple to read, but a lot of good nuggets and toolkits in there that can be helpful for any caregiver. And I believe that's it. Ms. Violet, the last slide. Just my contact information for those who wish to have it. I have the contact information for my church, as well as the practice that I am currently in. We are located in Spencer. And just wanted to highlight that as well. There's a couple of New Hope Counseling Centers, but we are New Hope Counseling, Inc. So that is my presentation for this evening. Thank you again all for having me, and hope you can take a few nuggets.
Thank you
Giselle,
so
did
much.
you?
Yeah, I was just gonna, Celia and I are trying to play eye contact here in our cubes. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. To our panelists, this is so much wealth of information and knowledge here in this last hour that we've been together, that it's phenomenal to see. To all of our attendees and participants in our webinar here today, please feel free to save all our chats. You can actually save that as a feature so that way you can go back into those resources later on, so you're not scrambling and trying to copy and paste or write it all out. And I am sure that MAWOCC will also send out the PowerPoints for these presentations as well, which do seem to have like the clickable option so you can go right in. And I'm going to say thank you one last time. This was great. And I'm going to hand over the mic to Celia.
Thank you, Giselle. Wonderful job in moderating. We had a couple things that we had to adjust, but I think we pulled it off, and we're right at 7:30. I want to thank our wonderful panelists. So we had wonderful moderator panelists. You guys were amazing, and I know we're just really just scratching the surface. I want to do a plug for us continuing this the series and dive. We talked briefly about sort of diving in a little bit deeper going into next year, and really hope that you'll continue to help us and support us in this such important topic and the important work that you all are doing. So great, really grateful for your time with us this evening, and thanks for your patience. We want to also thank the participants for being with us today. I know some people weren't able to attend, but we will. We do have this recording. We'll send it out along with the resources that I think are so important for people to be able to use whatever they can to help them manage whatever situation they're in. We do have a political and civic leadership platform meeting next month. Stay tuned for dates on that. And we also do have a central regional meeting at Mount Wachusett College in Leominster on October 12th from 6 to 8. For those who are in the central region, you're welcome to come in person. And please save the date for January 20th, 2024 for our annual meeting, which you don't want to miss. So with that, I thank you all, and I want to thank Brenda Jenkins, who is our statewide platform chair, co-visionary and founding member, and Rosa Fernandez, who's also planning committee, and Magda Tekla Michael, and Violet Blue for helping us out with the support this evening. So thank you all very much, everybody, and have a good night.